This is Audible.
Karina Adores and Harper Audio present Time to Shine by Rachel Reid, performed by Cooper North. Time to Shine contains depictions of grief related to the past death of a close family member. This book is for Matt, Mitchell, and Trevor. Thank you for your support and patience. Chapter 1. Landon Stackhouse had been expecting the call, but his heart still caught in his throat when his phone rang. "They need you in Calgary," his team's general manager, Chris Ferguson, said. 5 words that Landon had been waiting to hear for over 2 years. "Yes, sir. I can drive myself there." It was a 6-hour drive at least from Saskatoon to Calgary, and since it was November, there was a decent chance of snow happening somewhere during it. But if Landon left now... "Nah, you're booked on the next flight out of Saskatoon. Leaves in 2 hours. You've got a room waiting at a hotel near the arena. Someone from the Outlaws should be in touch soon with more info." "Right," Landon said, barely stopping himself from asking how he'd get his car to Calgary. He wouldn't need it. It was fine. He'd probably only be there for a couple of days anyway, maybe a week. He saw the game last night and saw the Outlaws' backup goalie, Gilbert Morin, get run over by a Dallas player. The injury didn't look good. Morin had needed to be helped off the ice. "You know this is good news, right?" Landon could hear the smile in Ferguson's voice. "Getting called up to the NHL?" "Yes," Ferguson laughed. "I'll miss those sparkling conversations, Stackhouse. Good luck in Calgary. You've been outstanding for us, so go show the big guys what you've got." Landon doubted he'd be showing them much more than his door-opening skills while sitting on the bench, but he said, "I will. And try to enjoy yourself, for God's sake." "Thank you, sir." After the call ended, he sat on his bed with his hands on his knees, pressing his fingers into the soft material of his sweatpants. "Okay," he said quietly into his empty bedroom. "Okay." He tried to put the situation into perspective. Yes, he was going to the big leagues. Yes, he would be teammates with actual superstars, including his hero Anton Niskanen. Yes, this was what all his hard work was for. This was different from the training camps where he was always inevitably cut early. Calgary wanted him. But also, he was about to go from being Saskatoon's starting goaltender to sitting on the bench in Calgary. Realistically, he was barely going to meet any of his big league teammates before hopping on a plane straight back down to the farm team. This would be a cool experience, but it wouldn't change his life. He could be sure of that. "I should probably tell Mom and Dad, huh?" Landon said out loud to someone who wasn't there. He sent a text to his mom, who was more reliable about checking her phone. "Got called up. Heading to Calgary now." After a moment, he added, "Flying, not driving," to reduce her anxiety. He packed quickly and efficiently, the same way he would for a roadie, not as if he was moving to a new home. Because he wasn't. Should he wear his suit? This was the big leagues. He should wear his suit. He removed his basic navy suit from the garment bag he'd carefully packed it in. Minutes later, he was inspecting himself in his full-length mirror, which he stood far away from by necessity to fit his entire 6'4" frame into the glass. He ran a hand over his clean-shaven face and unnecessarily smoothed his short brown hair. The last time he'd been in Calgary was over 2 months ago for the Outlaws Prospects training camp. He'd known then that he'd had no hope of making the team. Calgary's goaltending duo was the envy of the league. Anton Niskanen was a future Hall of Famer, no question, and Gilbert Morin had once been a star goalie for Buffalo and was now a solid backup for Niskanen. Landon had worked hard in the AHL and had established himself as the best of the rest. He could probably expect to see a lot more of Calgary as inevitable injuries and illnesses happened. Calgary wanted to rely on him in a tough situation, and Landon needed to show them that they could. The man in the mirror looked reliable, he thought. Responsible. Probably too skinny, but that was unlikely to ever change. At least he was tall. Coaches and general managers liked tall. Landon didn't particularly enjoy looking at himself. He didn't like being seen, and only truly felt comfortable when he was wearing 50 pounds of goalie gear. Outside of his shell, he was all limbs and sharp angles and vulnerable skin and bones. He had to talk to people and think about things that weren't hockey. It was the worst. Mom replied to his text just before he left his apartment to start his new adventure. "Congratulations! That's amazing, and we're so excited for you. Love you. Be careful." Landon grimaced at the "be careful," though he couldn't blame his parents for worrying, just like he didn't blame them for not watching his games. The limited support they were able to give him was already more than he deserved, and the usual wave of guilt swept over him as he wrote back, "I will. Love you too." Landon was sitting in an NHL locker room directly across from Anton Niskanen. Anton fucking Niskanen! He'd met him before, at training camps, but there had been lots of goalies at those, and Niskanen hadn't been present for most of the practices and scrimmages. Superstars rarely were. So far, Landon's conversations with his idol could be described as short and embarrassing. Last time Landon had attempted to talk to him, he'd clumsily stopped himself from gushing about what an honor it was to meet him by complimenting Niskanen's shoes and asking where he'd bought them. Niskanen had said, "Milan," and then had turned to talk to the Outlaws' captain, Lee Ramsey. Landon had walked away, mentally kicking himself with his own Marshall's dress shoes. Things could only get better, right? When he'd first walked into the arena, Landon had met with Andy Bates, the goalie coach, and learned that he'd arrived during a hectic week. After the game tonight, there would be a short practice and video meeting in the morning. Then the team would be flying to St. Louis to start a 4-game road trip. A real NHL road trip, with airplanes and everything. Landon was glad he'd be busy. He knew himself, and if he wasn't kept busy, he would spend every hour not at the arena alone in his hotel room. The travel would be good for him. So far, Landon had been met with polite greetings and nods by his temporary teammates, the exact sort of welcome one could expect from coworkers who knew there was no point in trying to get to know you. In the locker room now, there was chatter and laughter and the easy camaraderie of men who were together nearly every day and night. Landon had made a beeline for his own stall when he'd first entered the room, keeping his head down, letting everyone here know that he was here to do a job and didn't mind being ignored. As he was fastening the straps of his right leg pad, a pair of skates with neon pink laces stepped between his widespread legs. He glanced up and saw the smiling face of Casey Hicks, Calgary's young star left winger. "Hey, Stax, good to see you again," Casey said, as if they were old friends instead of two guys who had barely spoken to each other during training camp. "How's Saskatoon been treating you?" Good. Team's had a strong start." "Thanks to you." When Landon's face must have shown surprise, Casey added, "Yeah, I follow that shit. I've got lots of friends in the AHL. I saw that epic save you made last month, the one where you were all, Casey stretched his arms out and lifted one leg. Landon knew the save he was talking about, and it had looked nothing like that. That was a tough one, Landon agreed. Casey put his arms and leg down and kept smiling at him. Landon went back to fastening his straps. "What's your wingspan?" Casey asked. "It must be like a mile long, right?" "About 6'9". "Nice," Casey replied automatically, then laughed. "For real, though, that's killer." Casey had dimples when he laughed, combined with his shoulder-length dark blonde hair, unusual blue-green eyes, and pink lips. It was understandable why he was a fan favorite for reasons beyond his hockey skills. He was cute. "Thanks," Landon said, because he wasn't sure what else to say. Casey nodded. "Well, welcome to Calgary. Everyone's cool here. I heard the post-game meal's gonna be subs. Try to grab one of the chicken parm ones. They go fast and they are fucking awesome." As if Landon was going to elbow his way to the front of the food line on his first night with the team to get the good sandwiches, in front of players who had actually played. "Oh, and avoid the third shower stall on the right because it's all fucked up." "Okay." Casey's tone turned gravely serious. "No, for real. Don't use it." Landon stared at him. "I won't." The easy smile returned to Casey's lips. "Cool. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" Landon couldn't imagine what he could possibly need from Casey Hicks. If he required anything at all during his short stay in Calgary, he could probably find someone more appropriate to ask than an all-star, even if the all-star in question was a year younger than Landon. Still, though, the offer was nice. "I will. Thanks." A few minutes later, the team took to the ice for warm-ups. Anton Niskanen dropped to the ice in his usual spot to stretch, and Landon found a spot far away from him. He knew Anton didn't like to talk before games. He knew everything about him. Landon didn't like to talk much either, so he stretched in silence and tried not to be obvious about the glances he was stealing of his idol. Anton's mask was a new variation on the same design he'd had for years, a team of demonic horses breathing fire, mounted by skeletons wearing cowboy outfits. This year the mask had Nisk written like a brand on the chin of the mask, the letters still smoking. It looked dope. Landon was wearing his Saskatoon Bandits mask, which thankfully matched the Calgary team colors. Lee Ramsey took a knee on the ice beside Landon. "Hey, I didn't get a chance to welcome you earlier. Sorry, I was getting some treatment." "No worries," Landon said, because he was totally chill and not at all starstruck. Lee was in his 14th season of an incredible career and had been Calgary's captain for 7 of those seasons. He was often described as a natural leader, the kind of captain every team wants. He was also often described as handsome, which he absolutely was, with his warm brown skin, tall, muscular build, and his Hollywood smile. "You know anyone here?" Lee asked him. "I've met some of the guys before at training camps." "Gotcha. So no friends on the team?" No. Not yet," Landon said, as if he would be making friends any minute now. "Rossi is a good kid. Leandros, too. They're tight, though. Definitely come as a package." Landon wasn't sure how to react to Lee Ramsey trying to suggest potential friends for him. Lee was 10 years older than Landon and married with kids, so of course Landon didn't expect him to volunteer for the job himself. "Hicks is about your age," Lee said, then laughed. "But you'll never get a moment of quiet with that guy." Landon glanced across the ice where Casey Hicks was standing between 2 other forwards. Casey was talking and the other 2 men were laughing. Casey was several inches shorter than either of them. He was, Landon knew, the shortest player on the team by about 2 inches. His official listed height was 5'9", but Landon suspected that number had been stretched a bit. Lee tapped Landon on the shoulder and said, "We'll talk later," before standing and skating away. Landon's gaze followed him to where the Calgary players were lining up to take shots on the net. There were so many star players on the ice, both on Calgary's half of the ice and down in the Los Angeles end. Landon tried to ignore his own nerves about it, like he tried to ignore how much bigger this arena was than the one in Saskatoon. How much louder it was already, even though the seats were only partially full for the warm-ups. He watched Niskanen stop rapid-fire shots from his teammates. The veteran goalie's movements were quick and confident, efficient, just how Landon had modeled his own style of play. Not that he was comparing himself to Niskanen. Holy shit, he was teammates with Anton Niskanen, and Lee Ramsey, and Casey Hicks, and Ross McIsaac. The list went on. And now, he had to take his turn in the net. Anton nodded at Landon as he passed him. He may have said something, but Landon didn't hear. He was entirely focused on settling his nerves. It was warm-ups, for fuck's sake, not the playoffs. He got in position, exhaled, and waited. When the first puck slammed into his blocker pad, he smiled behind his mask. He could do this. The Calgary Outlaws open-fired on him, and Landon welcomed every thud against his body like a friend. He loved this. He knew it wasn't normal to enjoy being bludgeoned with pucks, but God, he lived for it. He loved being in a headspace where nothing mattered but making sure he didn't let anything get past him. Of course, some pucks got past him. No goalie stopped every shot during warm-ups, but enough pucks thudded off of him to quiet his brain. By the time he headed back to the locker room with the rest of the team, he felt calm. Calgary's head coach, Greg Patrick, was waiting for them in the locker room. He kept his words brief, reading out the lines for the game and reminding his players of a few key things about the LA team. Everyone listened intently, including Landon. Patrick was unusually soft-spoken for a hockey coach, known more for his intelligence and sharp attention to detail than his ability to intimidate and shame. He was the style of coach Landon responded best to. "I'd like to welcome Landon Stackhouse to the team," Coach said, and suddenly all eyes turned to the new goalie. Landon wished he still had his mask on. He held up a hand, not quite a wave, more of an acknowledgement that, yes, he was Landon. He was here. "Hi, Stacks," Casey Hicks called out cheerfully. Some of the other guys laughed. "Let's show the new guy how we win in Calgary, all right, boys?" Coach said. There were whoops of agreement, then everyone stood to shuffle into the hall. In the hallway that led to the ice, the guys were loud and excited, calling out nicknames, performing pregame rituals with each other. Niskanen was crouched at the end of the line, staring at the wall, focused. Hicks was doing a ridiculous little dance with his line mate, Clint Noseworthy. Landon stood near the back, but not all the way at the back because Ross McIsaac, Calgary's 37-year-old defenseman, was famously superstitious about being the last one to step on the ice. It felt both surreal and normal at the same time, waiting to go on the ice. The home crowd in Saskatoon loved their team, so being greeted by a full house of cheering fans wasn't new for Landon. The house was just twice as big in Calgary. But in Saskatoon, Landon was the star. People wore his jersey there, and he often got the loudest cheer when the starting lineups were announced before games. He'd played a huge part in making the Saskatoon Bandits a Calder Cup contender last season, taking them deep in the playoffs last spring. Here, Landon felt like a ghost floating among these stars, or like a kid who'd won a prize to hang out with his heroes for a day. He glanced down at his chest, almost shocked to see that he was wearing the same uniform as everyone else around him, the iconic red, white, and golden yellow of the Calgary Outlaws. Doesn't feel real, right? Said a cheerful voice. Landon realized two things at once as his head jerked up in surprise. That Casey Hicks was suddenly standing beside him, and that Landon had been caressing the Outlaws logo on his own chest with his blocker glove. My first game, I was like... Casey bugged his eyes out and pulled his mouth into an exaggerated cringe. You know? Yeah, Landon agreed, because that basically summed up how he was feeling. It's just hockey, Casey said easily. And we're good at hockey. If they wanted us to go out there and do, like, opera, I'd be fucked. But hockey? No problem. Right. Landon was starting to feel more confused than nervous. What about you? What about me what? Could you sing opera if you had to? Landon stared at Casey for a long moment, trying to decide if he was making fun of him or not. He got sidetracked along the way by Casey's dimples. Finally, he just said, No. Casey gently bumped his glove against Landon's chest. Oh, but imagine if you just, started singing perfect opera at me. That would have been epic. Landon could not imagine it. At all. He also couldn't look at Casey's dimples anymore, so he focused instead on the floor. Casey's famous pink skate laces gleamed up at him. They clashed horribly with the tomato-red uniform socks, but Landon was sure Casey didn't care. Here we go, boys, someone yelled from near the front of the line. Casey let out a scream like a hawk in reply, and Landon hoped he didn't have permanent hearing damage. A few minutes later, Landon was seated at one end of the bench watching an NHL game. It was fucking awesome. Even if he was only in Calgary for one night and he never again returned to this league, he'd have this. He'd have gotten to watch Anton Niskanen shut down the Los Angeles team in a way that seemed effortless, but Landon knew was pure, unmatched skill. LA was a good team. They'd taken Calgary to Game 7 in the first round of the playoffs last season, but just like in that 7th game, Anton wasn't giving them an inch tonight. Calgary's top line of Lee Ramsey, Clint Noseworthy, and Casey Hicks was incredible to watch this close as well. The crowd was obviously in love with Casey in particular, cheering every time he had the puck and exploding in celebration when he scored the first goal of the game. Landon spotted a ton of jerseys in the crowd with Casey's name and number on them. Casey's father, Dougie Hicks, was in the Hockey Hall of Fame after a long, outstanding career. He hadn't played for Calgary. He'd started his career in Toronto and then played for Tampa Bay for his final 8 seasons, but he must be an Outlaws fan now. Landon's dad, a lifelong Toronto fan, had loved Dougie Hicks. Dougie's son was almost as impressive already, but had a very different style of play. Where Dougie had been intimidating and physical, Casey seemed to have fun, skating around opponents and making them look bad. Calgary had a great team. It was an interesting mix of players who gelled well together. Lee Ramsey had played his entire career in Calgary. Ross McIsaac, the most senior defenseman on the team, had joined the Outlaws on a 2-year contract after an incredible 14 seasons in New Jersey. There were a bunch of young, talented players, which, added to the fact that the farm team in Saskatoon was currently at the top of their division, boded well for Calgary's future. Landon wondered if he would be a part of that future. Obviously, that was the dream, but it didn't seem very likely. He was a star in Saskatoon, though, so if he never truly made it past that level, well, there were worse things. But when Niskanen made an unreal save and the crowd of over 20,000 Outlaws fans roared their excitement, Landon couldn't help but think there were better things too. Chapter 2. Casey wedged himself between Clint Noseworthy and West Ackerman, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. I don't know about you guys, but I could use a beer. West stepped away from him. Not tonight, Case. Gotta rest up for the roadie. Clint agreed. I'm wired, though, Casey said. No way am I getting to sleep anytime soon. Come on, one drink. I'm buying. He pointed at Clint. We can go to that country bar you like. Clint shook his head. I'll let you buy me a beer another night. Casey would not be defeated. He turned to Ross McIsaac, who was shrugging on his coat, ready to leave the locker room. How about you, Mac? Beer, wings? Ross laughed. The night before a road trip, Mandy would kill me. I promised the kids I'd make pancakes in the morning and they get up fucking early. Yeah, okay, Casey said, trying not to sound too dejected. The locker room was emptying fast. He made a last-ditch effort and raised his voice so the whole room could hear him. Anyone want to come to my place? Have a beer? Hang out for a bit? The only response was some assorted muttering, none of which sounded enthusiastic about his offer. Things were looking bad for Operation Avoid Going Home Alone. He spotted the new guy, Landon, standing in one corner, frowning at his phone. He was wearing a long, black wool coat that accentuated how tall and slim he was. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder, obviously about to leave. Casey was walking toward him before he'd bothered to think about it. Hey, Stax, you got plans tonight? Landon blinked at him. His eyes were huge and dark brown, framed by long lashes. Pretty, his thick, straight eyebrows bunched together as he said, Plans? Yeah, you want to go out, get a beer or something? Or we could go to my place. I've got all the movie channels. Or we could just, chill. Whoops. He laughed and held up his hands. Sorry, not like chill. I'm not saying we should have sex. That's not what this is. Not that you're not. Fuck. Okay, I thought you might want something better to do than go back to that hotel room. We could go to a bar. He forced himself to stop talking because Landon's cheeks had turned pink. He was clean-shaven and had very pale skin, giving his blush nowhere to hide. Thank you, Landon said after a weird few seconds. But it's been a long day and I need to sleep. Damn. Cool, Casey said as cheerfully as he could manage. Totally get that. Forgot that you woke up in Saskatchewan this morning. You're probably zonked. Did you get one of those chicken parm subs? No. Shit, you should have told me. I would have made sure. Unless you don't eat meat, or dairy, or bread. I eat all of those things, Landon said seriously. I need to eat a lot. Can't afford to be choosy. Casey laughed. I'll bet, Slender Man. He'd hoped the gentle teasing would get a smile out of Landon. It didn't. Hey, you gonna be at the gym here tomorrow morning? I was planning on it. Nice, yeah, I'll be here. Casey completely forgot where he was going with any of this, so he just smiled at Landon and hoped the other man would think of something to say. Okay, Landon said finally. Dope. I'll see you tomorrow then. For sure. Have a good sleep. You can text me if you change your mind. I'll be up for a bit. Jesus, Casey? That sounded wrong. I don't mean like, you up. Casey pressed his lips together to stop any more words from spilling out. Landon glanced away, clearly uncomfortable. I get it. Good night. He turned and almost ran toward the exit. Casey couldn't blame him. Well, Casey could do the responsible thing and go home. Alone. He really should try to go to bed early so he wasn't exhausted or hungover for his morning workout. Decision made, Casey congratulated himself on his maturity and strode toward the players' parking lot. Casey regretted his decision to be responsible the minute he walked in his house. His large, dark, empty house. He considered getting back in his Jeep and driving to one of his favorite bars. He considered the long list of reliable hookups he could send messages to. It was past 11:30 on a Sunday night, but someone would be up for coming over, right? Those would be the easy things to do, the things he always did. Last season, before he bought this house, He'd loved going home after games. Home had been a rented house shared with two teammates, Pete Leandros and Gio Rossi, and the evenings would be full of movies, video games, beer, weed, bars, and sex. Not with each other, though Casey wouldn't have been opposed to that. Gio and Petey both seemed pretty committed to heterosexuality, so Casey had never gone there. He missed having roommates. His teammates knew he'd happily share his house with any of them, no charge, but so far no one had taken him up on the offer. Casey got it. He knew he was kind of a lot. He made his way to the kitchen, turning on every light as he went. He hated how his pulse kicked up when he was alone at night, how he couldn't help constantly checking over his shoulder, or how he studied every door suspiciously, how he couldn't look at the dark windows at all. It was beyond ridiculous, and there was absolutely no reason for it, just his brain being stupid. Why the fuck had he bought this house? A loud clattering noise made him nearly jump out of his skin before he realized it was the ice maker in his fridge doing its thing. Jesus. Chill out, Hicks, he muttered as he grabbed a glass from his cupboard. He shoved it under the ice dispenser to prove he wasn't afraid of it. It dropped 2 ice cubes, then made an angry whirring noise. Hunk of junk, Casey grumbled. Every appliance in his house was super high-tech, and none of it worked right. He opened the fridge, grabbed a plastic bottle of lemonade and a silver container labeled Sunday Night Snack. He hoped it was cake, but knew it wouldn't be. He brought his glass of lemonade and his snack to the massive leather sectional sofa in his living room. He called out to the AI speaker thing to turn on the TV and was ignored. Thanks, he said as he searched for the remote, eventually finding it at one end of the sofa under an unwashed sweatshirt. He made a show of turning on the TV, as if the AI unit could learn from watching him. If he had to be alone, he could at least pretend he wasn't. He flipped through channels and ended up watching wrestling while he ate his snack, grain salad and 2 hard-boiled eggs, disappointingly dissimilar to cake, vaped some weed, then watched a bit of one of the Mission Impossible movies while he idly scrolled through his favorite hookup apps. It didn't hurt to look. A text from his sister, Brooke, interrupted his careful consideration of a dude with a nice chest and 2 pierced nipples. Sweet goal tonight. Casey. Made your BF look like dog shit. Brooke. He's not my boyfriend because someone won't introduce me. Casey laughed. Brooke was hot for one of the LA defensemen, but Casey was pretty sure the dude was engaged. Casey. IDK him, just know how to deke around him. Brooke. Did Dad tell you about the Christmas plan? Casey. Yep, renting a cabin near Banff. Brooke. LOL. Cabin. It's a fucking mansion. 8 bedrooms. Casey. 2 for each of us. Brooke. Nice math, college boy. His family liked to roast him for being kind of stupid. It didn't bother Casey because, well, he was kind of stupid. Not about everything, but about a lot of things. His teammates roasted him for the same thing, as had his friends in college, so Casey owned it. He and Brooke texted back and forth for a while until she said she was going to bed. The weed had done a decent job settling Casey's nerves, so he decided to try going to sleep too. He left his food container and empty glass on the coffee table to be dealt with when the kitchen was less dark and creepy, and headed upstairs. Tomorrow night he'd be in a hotel room in St. Louis, hopefully with someone hot he'd met at a bar. He wouldn't have to be alone in this house for almost a week. He turned off the overhead light in his bedroom before he climbed into bed, leaving the lamp on his nightstand on, as always. He watched videos on his phone until he couldn't hold his eyes open anymore, then fell asleep, hoping he didn't wake until morning. Chapter 3. Do you think that we're the closest thing to knights these days? Casey wondered aloud. He basically wondered everything aloud. Lee paused mid-abdominal crunch and stared up at Casey from the floor. Knights? What the fuck are you talking about? What is he ever talking about? Clint teased as he picked up a kettleball. Like, Casey explained, we wear armor, kind of, and fight for our cities, kind of like kingdoms. I know it's not the same. It's not like there are dragons to kill anymore. Wait, Lee sat all the way up. Did you just say any more? Clint was laughing so hard he had to put the kettlebell down. Hey, snapped West. Is anyone spotting me right now or what? Sorry, Casey said, and returned his focus to the man lying on the weight bench in front of him. The gym was busy that morning, even though it was an optional workout before their flight to St. Louis. You know that dragons never existed, Lee said slowly. Right? I'm spotting Westy right now. Barely, West grumbled. I need to hear you say those words, Hicks. Yeah, okay. Dragons aren't real. And were never real. Dinosaurs were real, Casey argued. Those were basically the same. Clint was howling as he staggered toward the bathroom. I can't. Holy fuck. Didn't you go to college? West asked. Yeah, but I wasn't learning about that stuff. Truthfully, he hadn't learned much of anything beyond hockey skills during his 2 years of college, except that he really liked sex and didn't like tequila. What stuff? Lee asked. His eyes were wide and almost fearful. Dragons? No, like history? Lee fell back to the floor with his arms outstretched like he was dead. "Aw, Casey," West said sadly. "Even for you, this is bleak, dude. I was going to argue that we're more like gladiators than knights, but my brain just shut down for its own protection," Lee said. Ross McIsaac paused on his journey across the gym to stare down at Lee. "You okay, Captain?" "Hicks thinks dragons are real." Ross's brow furrowed. "Like fire-breathing dragons?" "I don't think dragons are real." Casey was desperate for this conversation to be over. "I just thought, forget it, fuck you guys." Ross shrugged and walked away. "Hey," West said, "if it isn't too much trouble, could you help me rack this fucking barbell, Hicks?" "Right, sorry." He grabbed the barbell and eased it into the rack. He wasn't embarrassed exactly. After years of unintentionally saying stupid shit to basically everyone he met, he was more or less immune to embarrassment. He only wished he was better at keeping the random stuff in his head. West sat up and swung his legs to sit sideways on the bench. "You doing another set?" Casey said. His gaze had fallen on a treadmill in the corner of the room where Landon Stackhouse was running at an impressive clip. Landon stared straight ahead, stone-faced and focused, seemingly ignoring everyone around him. He was wearing shorts and his legs looked a mile long. "Hicks?" West asked, breaking the hypnotic state Casey had been entering watching Landon run like he was punishing himself. "I'm good," Casey said. "I'm gonna—" He walked away without finishing his sentence and kept walking until he was standing next to Landon's treadmill. Landon didn't seem to notice him, or if he did, wasn't interested in turning his head to acknowledge him. That was fine since Casey had no idea why he was standing here. He got on the stationary bike next to him, just to appear normal. Now he could see Landon's reflection in the mirror in front of them. He tried to meet his gaze and offered a smile, but Landon kept staring straight ahead, lips pulled tight in a frown. It was intense. He wasn't even wearing earbuds. Casey pedaled for a while and did his best not to stare at Landon's reflection. He wasn't sure why he found the man so fascinating to look at. He was handsome, but most of the guys in the room were. Maybe it was simply the novelty of Landon being new, of being someone who didn't know how stupid Casey was yet. Landon didn't seem stupid at all. Casey would bet he read books for fun and kept up with the news and shit. After about 10 minutes, the pounding of Landon's sneakers slowed to a walk. He exhaled loudly, but he didn't seem as wiped as Casey would certainly be if he'd been running at that pace. Casey was in great shape, but distance running was definitely not his thing. "Did you catch him?" Casey asked Landon's reflection. "Catch him? Whoever you were chasing, running like that." "Oh," he sniffed. "Funny." Casey stopped pedaling and turned to face him. "You get some sleep? In the hotel?" "Some." "That's good. I sleep well in hotels usually. Not sure why." He knew exactly why. Hotels were full of people and the rooms weren't cavernous spaces full of dark corners. "Hey, you excited for your first NHL roadie?" Landon stopped the treadmill. "Sure." "Sweet. This one's not that cool. But the next big one, we go to Vegas, and that's always fun. You ever been to Vegas?" "No." "Oh man, you'll love it. It's exactly like in all the movies. It's all lights and people and fun. It's awesome." "I'll probably be back in Saskatoon by then." "Shit." "Yeah, right. I guess probably." Casey wasn't sure why that made him feel sad. It's not like he was hoping Moran's injury was serious. "I'm going to do my stretches," Landon said, then stepped off the treadmill. "Of course, yeah. Gotta keep that goalie body all bendy." Landon's dark eyebrows pinched together. "Right." He began to walk away, then paused. He took a step toward Casey, then bent so their faces were close and quietly said, "Dragon lizards exist." It took Casey a moment to realize Landon wasn't making fun of him. Then another moment to get over the shock of learning that Landon had been listening to the whole dragon conversation while seemingly being focused on destroying a treadmill. Finally, Casey smiled and said, "Dragon lizards, right. What are those?" Landon's lips curved up slightly. "It's a type of lizard. There are a bunch of different kinds, like Komodo dragons and bearded dragons." "Bearded dragon," Casey repeated as an image of a lizard with a Santa beard filled his head. "Dope." Landon hovered for another moment, his big brown eyes locked on Casey's, then turned and walked away. Chapter 4. Landon was trying really hard not to look like a total bumpkin, but he was probably failing. Between the private plane, the fancy food that was served on the plane, and the luxurious hotel the team was staying at, Landon was a little overwhelmed. No long bus rides on icy highways, no stops at a Subway for dinner, no off-ramp adjacent cheap motels. It had also been the first time Landon's legs had actually fit in front of his plane seat. He could get used to this. The roommate he'd been assigned, a second-year defenseman named West Ackerman, seemed less impressed. "None of the outlets have USB ports? Jesus, nice hotel, St. Louis." Landon, who had never been to St. Louis in his life, turned from where he'd been staring out their 24th floor window. "I brought a plug you can borrow." "I have one," West said grumpily as he grabbed his backpack off the floor. "Somewhere." West wasn't quite as tall as Landon, but was much broader with wide shoulders and huge muscles everywhere. His blonde hair was short and neatly styled, making him look like an all-American superhero. He was, in fact, American, which Landon decided to try as a conversation topic. "Are you from near here?" West didn't look away from his backpack. "What? No, I'm from Hartford. Where the fuck is that plug?" End of conversation. Landon sat on his bed and stretched his legs out. It was a nice bed, firm and not creaky at all. On roadies with his usual team, Landon always roomed with the other goalie, Felix Lavoie. They had a good thing going because they were both quiet, had similar routines, and gave each other as much space as possible. When they did talk, it was mostly about goaltending and never got too personal. It was perfect. Landon's phone lit up with a message, and it seemed West's phone did the same. Team group chat, then. Landon hadn't contributed to the Outlaws group chat yet, still mostly focusing on the Saskatoon Bandits one. Not that he had much to say in that one either. Casey. Who's in? The text was followed by a link to a local bar's website. West huffed out a laugh. That didn't take him long. A new message popped up from West. I'm in, but no shots this time. Casey. Totally chill. Game tomorrow. Lee. It better be chill. I'm staying in, and I don't want any of you idiots to be hungover tomorrow. More messages flooded in. Landon noticed that it was mostly the younger players who were agreeing to go out. This happens a lot? Landon asked. Hicks planning stuff? Yeah, West said. He's the social director for sure. Don't know why he bothers inviting anyone. He always finds someone to hook up with in like 2 minutes. Hicks lives a charmed fucking life. Does he? Landon asked, even though obviously, yes. Are you kidding? He basically grew up in this league. His dad is a legend and loaded. All of this, West waved a hand around, is like normal for Casey. Like it never occurred to him that he wouldn't play in the NHL. Right. He makes it hard to resent him, though. He's a good guy, chatty as fuck, but fun. Small doses, you know? Even after the short interactions Landon had had with Casey, he could tell the guy would probably get exhausting quickly. He also wasn't surprised Casey had no trouble finding people to hook up with. Not only was he pretty, he seemed to not even consider the fact that someone might not like him, which would make it a lot easier to shoot his shot. Basically the opposite of Landon, who would rather die than attempt to chat someone up in a bar. He'd honestly have no idea what to do next if the person he'd managed to flirt with suggested they go have sex somewhere. Even imagining that scenario made his stomach hurt and his pulse speed up. Landon typed out, I'm staying in. He hesitated before hitting send, because did anyone even care if he went out or not? He sent the message and put his phone down on the bed beside him. You're not coming out? West asked, eyebrows raised. Nah, Landon said, hoping he sounded relaxed and cool. Then something occurred to him. Unless, did you want me out of the room? Are you planning to bring someone back here? Don't worry about it. I've got a girlfriend. Though I may ask for an hour or two to FaceTime her one of these nights. Right, got it. No problem. In Landon's experience, having a girlfriend or even a wife at home didn't necessarily mean hockey players weren't going to hook up with strangers on the road. If West really was faithful to his girlfriend, that would make this road trip a lot more comfortable for Landon. Found it! West triumphantly held up his phone charger. We've got 2 hours before dinner. Gio and Petey have a PlayStation set up in their room if you want to come check that out. It was a nice offer and Landon appreciated it, but I think I might try to nap, he said. Thanks, though. Okay, it's room 2417 if you change your mind. With that, West left, phone and charger in hand. Landon stood and went back to the window. The sun was low in the sky, the beginning of what looked like a beautiful sunset. He thought about calling his mom. He brought up her number on his phone and hovered his thumb over it. He hadn't spoken to either of his parents in over a week, beyond a few texts, and he hated himself for that. In the past year or so, their conversations had been lighter, reminding him more of the way his family had been before tragedy had torn them to shreds. But he was still on edge whenever he spoke with them. Lately, all he wanted to say was, I'm sorry, a million times. but not over the phone. Right now, he just wanted to hear their voices and to attempt to convince them that he was thriving. The sun was a lot lower by the time he finally called them. Mom answered right away. "Landon, is everything okay?" He winced. He really needed to call them more often. "I'm fine. I'm in St. Louis and just wanted to call you." Mom exhaled slowly. "It's nice to hear from you. We watched the first period of your game last night. Sorry we couldn't stay awake past that." "It's fine. I wasn't playing anyway." Halifax was 3 hours ahead of Calgary, which made watching the games live difficult, especially for people like his parents who had to be up early for work. "They showed you, though, on the bench. You looked handsome." Landon smiled wryly. "Well, that's the important thing." An awkward silence fell between them, as it often did. They stood in for all of Landon's unsaid apologies, all of the resentment he was sure his parents carried, and all of their mutual pain and grief. "Oh," Mom said. "Dad just got home. I'll put you on speakerphone." "Okay." A few seconds later, his dad said, "Hi, Landon. How's Calgary?" "Good. I haven't seen much of it. Mostly the arena and the hotel." "He's in St. Louis now," Mom said in an impressed tone that made St. Louis sound like Paris. "Did you see the big arch?" Dad asked. "I saw it, yeah. It's hard to miss." "Are they treating you well in the big leagues? Making friends? How about Niskanen? It must be hard to believe you're teammates with him." Landon huffed out a laugh at Dad's excitement. "It is. It's surreal. I think I'll be back in Saskatoon soon, but for now it's an experience for sure." He skipped over the question about making friends. He'd never been good at that, but they didn't need to know it. "So you don't think you'll actually be playing in any Outlaws games?" Mom asked. Landon was sure he could hear relief in her voice, or maybe he was imagining it. "Probably not." "So it was snowing in Calgary this morning," Dad said. "Yeah, a bit. We haven't gotten any snow here yet." "Oh, soon, probably." Landon tried to think of something, anything interesting to say. "Going to Nashville next. Maybe I'll see some country stars." "Aaron would have been so jealous," Mom said. Another heavy silence fell between the three of them. Then she gave a nervous little laugh and said, "Anyway, Nashville's exciting. Where else are you going?" "Chicago, then home. Calgary, I mean." "We wish you were coming home," Dad said. "It would be nice to see you." "I know. I miss you guys." In that moment, he really, really did. He barely ever spent time in Halifax anymore, which he knew was his own doing. He kept busy during the summers, training and taking part in goaltending clinics. He'd spent most of last summer in Minnesota. He'd been selfish for so long now, he didn't know how to stop. "I should probably get going," he said, even though he had nowhere to be at all. He didn't like the way his heart was turning to lead. "I just wanted to say hi and, let you know I was okay." "We appreciate it," Dad said. "Be safe and have fun." "We love you," Mom added. "Love you too. Bye." He ended the call, then stared at the empty hotel room. After a moment, he turned the lights off, then sat on the edge of his bed to watch the sunset. He dug his fingers into his knees and wished he had a goalie mask with him. He knew it was weird, but it settled him sometimes, wearing it. What would Erin say if she were here? Would she tease him for being weird? Would she quietly enjoy the sunset with him? Would she urge him to go to the bar with his teammates? It was hard to know because he could only guess at the adult she would have become. He knew Erin wouldn't like seeing her younger brother being so mopey, especially after achieving his dream of playing, sort of, in the NHL. She'd always been the sunniest member of the family. "You think I should go to the bar, don't you?" he said to her now. "I probably won't. Sorry." Maybe he should go down to the room with the PlayStation and pretend to be normal and fun for a bit. Or maybe he really should take that nap. He'd slept like shit last night. His thoughts were interrupted by a loud knock on the door. He stood and went to open it, finding Casey Hicks on the other side. He was wearing black shorts, a t-shirt with a cartoon drawing of an anthropomorphic hot dog on it, and Adidas slides. His hair was loose around his shoulders and looked slightly damp. Landon was still wearing most of his suit from the plane. "Hey, Stax! Oh, shit. Sorry. Were you asleep?" Landon turned to look back at the dark hotel room. "No." He immediately wished he'd said yes, because that would have made the dark hotel room less weird. Casey didn't seem bothered by it. "Cool. So why aren't you coming out tonight?" Landon blinked at him. He'd never had to explain his absence at team outings before. His teammates in Saskatoon never expected him to go out. He did sometimes when he felt like it, but his default mode was antisocial homebody. "I don't know," is what he finally came up with for an answer. "Dude, you are so coming out. Mind if I come in for a bit? I'm bored." Sure." Landon stepped back and turned on the lights. Casey glided in, immediately kicked off his slides, and threw himself onto West's bed. "Where's Westy?" "In the PlayStation room." "That's cool. I'm banned from the PlayStation room." "Why?" "Because I suck at video games, and Gio says I'm distracting. And okay, one time," he held up a finger, "once I spilled a can of Coke on the PlayStation." Landon could easily imagine all of that. "Ah. I bought him a new PlayStation. He needs to let it go. We used to live together. PD too. So they probably got their fill of me." Landon didn't reply, so Casey kept talking. "We're still friends. I'm not saying we're not. We hang out all the time. Like away from the rink, I mean. Obviously, we hang out all the time for hockey reasons. So, what's your deal?" Landon had not been expecting the question and had no answer ready. "My deal?" Casey grinned. "Yeah. Where are you from? What are you into? You got a partner?" Landon sat on his own bed, facing Casey. "I'm from Halifax, in Nova Scotia," he clarified. "Sweet," Casey said. "Is that a cool place?" "It's okay. I'd never lived anywhere else until I played junior, so I don't have a lot to compare it to." "I lived all sorts of places," Casey said. "I was born in Toronto when Dad played there, so I'm technically Canadian, but I mostly grew up in Tampa. I did hockey camps and schools in Michigan and Wisconsin mostly, then ended up at Minnesota State for college, then Calgary." Landon nodded, trying to keep up. "Question 2 now," Casey said. "What are you into?" "Besides hockey?" "Dude, of course, besides hockey." Landon struggled for a moment to think of one single thing. "I like to cook." Casey seemed to like that answer. He beamed and said, "Yeah? I fucking suck at cooking. What can you cook?" "All sorts of stuff. I got into it after—" He paused and redirected. "I like watching cooking shows and YouTube videos. It's relaxing." "Do you read? You seem like someone who reads." Landon huffed out a surprised laugh. "What does that mean?" "You just seem smart. I don't know, you knew about dragon lizards, which, by the way, I Googled the shit out of, and they are fucking rad, though I was hoping the bearded dragon would have more of a beard." "So, you don't read?" "I read," Landon said, somewhat defensively. "Sometimes. I prefer watching videos. I retain information better that way." "Yeah, same. I'm shit at reading. Like, I can read, but it's so fucking boring. My mind wanders." Landon hoped he wouldn't regret asking this. "What are you into?" "Oh shit, I don't know. Everything. Having fun, meeting people." Well, the meeting people thing probably explained why Hicks was here. Not the having fun part, though. "You know those videos where they show you how something is made in a factory?" Casey asked. "I think so." "Super into those right now. I watched one today where they showed how pool balls are made, like billiard balls, not beach balls. It was fucking neat." "Was it on YouTube?" Landon asked, not because he cared, but because it seemed like a friendly thing to ask. "I don't remember. Somewhere. Mind if I turn on the TV?" So he was staying then. "Go ahead." Casey flipped through the channels, landing on a show about ice road truckers. It kept him quiet for about a minute and a half, and then he said, "So, partner?" "Partner?" "Yeah, girlfriend, boyfriend?" He waggled his eyebrows. "Both?" "Good grief." "No, me neither. I'm just having fun, you know? Meeting people." Casey grinned. "Yeah, you get it. No reason to tie myself down yet." Since Casey was all of 23 years old, Landon agreed. As for himself, a romantic relationship wasn't something that was even on his radar, and emotionally mangled weirdo with an intense work schedule wasn't a great dating app profile. "So the bar we're going to tonight is totally chill and fun. It's not a club or anything. More like a sports bar, kind of? I always try to go there when we're in St. Louis." "I'm going to try to get to bed early." Yeah, but come out for a bit. One drink, or no drinks if you want." "Do you drink?" "Sometimes, a bit." "One drink. Get to know some of your teammates. We're totally nice. How's Westy treating you?" "Fine. Seems cool." "I love Westy. He can be a dick sometimes, but he's just, focused. He wants to be a star. I think he will be." Landon thought of a real question he could ask Casey, but he wasn't sure if it was rude or not. Finally, he just blurted it out. "Are any of the guys ever jealous of you, do you think?" "Why? Because I'm hot?" Casey flashed another easy smile. "They should be." Landon's ears felt hot. "Because of your dad, I meant." Casey's face scrunched up as he considered the question. Yeah, maybe. I get chirped about it on the ice a lot, but then I just take the puck and score a goal. Hard to give Dad credit for those." Landon found himself suddenly very curious about what it would be like to have a celebrity father. He tried to come up with a coherent question, but Casey beat him to it. "I don't even think my game is anything like Dad's. For one thing, he's like 3 inches taller, which sucks for me. Where the fuck did those genes go, right? He was way more physical. I'm fast." "And creative," Landon added, because it was what Casey Hicks was best known for. Flashy, highlight reel goals and passes. Casey tapped the side of his own head. "Hockey IQ. I've got it. Good thing, because I am fucking stupid besides hockey." "You're not stupid," Landon said automatically, even though he hadn't been provided with a ton of evidence to support that. Still, he didn't like Casey putting himself down. "Nah, it's fine. I know myself pretty well, and I am for sure not smart." Landon wasn't sure how to argue with him, so he didn't. Instead, he watched a commercial that reminded him the holiday season had begun. It wasn't, historically, his favorite time of year. If it were up to Landon, there wouldn't be a break in the hockey schedule for Christmas, so he could avoid having 3 days with nothing to do but wallow in guilt and loneliness. "You gonna change out of that suit for dinner?" Casey asked. Landon welcomed the interruption to his misery spiral. He turned his gaze back to Casey. "I thought maybe we had to wear the suits to dinner?" Casey laughed. "Fuck no. Wear whatever you want. It's like a buffet in a fucking conference room." "Oh." Get changed. Wear something comfy. Or something slick for going to the bar later." "I'm not," Landon sighed, then stood and took one step toward his suitcase on the floor. "I really didn't pack any clothes for going out." Casey studied him for a moment, his eyes raking up and down Landon's tall frame. Then he smiled and said, "Well, you can't borrow mine." A breathy squeak escaped Landon's lips. He immediately covered his mouth and pretended to cough. It didn't work. "Was that laughter? Is that what you sound like when you laugh?" Casey asked, clearly delighted. "Dude, that's cute." "No," Landon said, still squeaky. He took a breath. "No, shut up." "I hear that a lot. Never works." Landon pressed his lips together. "Seriously, though," Casey said. "Just wear jeans or something. Did you pack jeans?" Landon had packed most of the clothes he'd brought from Saskatoon to Calgary, which didn't amount to a whole lot. "I have one pair of jeans, black ones." "Perfect. Wear your tightest t-shirt and you're good." Most of Landon's t-shirts were either branded with the Saskatoon Bandits or the Calgary Outlaws, and he may not have much game, but he knew wearing your team's gear to a bar was pretty weak. "I think I have a plain gray one." Casey frowned. "What?" Landon said flatly. "Sorry I didn't pack my fucking cartoon hot dog shirt." It was probably too soon for Landon to reveal how bitchy he could be, but Casey cracked up, actually curled into the fetal position on the bed laughing. It was alarming and kind of adorable. "I like you, Stax," he finally said. "You're hilarious." No one had ever accused Landon of that before. Casey stayed curled on his side on the bed and watched TV while Landon put together an outfit of sorts. Black skinny jeans, his high-top black sneakers, and a V-neck dark gray t-shirt that he normally only wore under other shirts. He examined himself in the full-length mirror beside the TV. He didn't look fashionable, but he didn't look like he was heading to the gym either. "Damn, dude, look at how hot you are," Casey said. Landon froze. "What?" "You look hot. Those jeans look tailor-made." "Were they tailor-made?" Landon huffed. "None of my clothes are tailor-made. And I'm not trying to look hot. I just want to go to dinner without looking ridiculous." "Sorry, Stax. You're hot. Live with it." Landon turned back to the mirror and tried to will away the heat that was flooding his cheeks. Why was Casey saying any of this? Why was Casey even here? He was an all-star who surely had lots of friends on the team. Landon would be back in Saskatoon in a few days. There was no reason for them to get to know each other. Was it possible that Casey Hicks was lonely? Landon dismissed the idea immediately. Like Casey had said himself, he liked meeting new people. Landon was a novelty, something a tiny bit interesting on an otherwise dull afternoon. Casey hopped to his feet suddenly. "Well, I should get changed too. See you at dinner. You know where it is?" "I'll find it." Landon assumed he could just follow everyone else. "Cool. Hopefully the food is decent, and if it sucks, we can eat at the bar later." Landon was 98% sure he wouldn't be going to the bar, but he nodded and watched Casey slip his feet back into his sandals. "Later, Stax." And then he was gone, leaving Landon alone to wonder what the hell any of that had been about. Chapter 5. Casey loved road trips. A lot of the guys groaned about them. Casey's dad had complained about them all the time, but Casey usually enjoyed himself on the road. He liked visiting different cities, trying new restaurants and bars, meeting new people. He liked spotting the Calgary fans in every arena they went to. He liked days off in cities that were a little more exciting or warmer than Calgary in the winter. He liked nights out, and he liked hotel sex. But most of all, he liked that he was never alone. He didn't have a roommate anymore. That had ended after his second season. Most guys were psyched to get their own rooms, and Casey could definitely appreciate that the privacy was nice for some things, but most of the time he was lonely and bored. Which was why he spent as little time alone in his room as possible. He visited his teammates' rooms, he organized outings, he invited people he'd just met back to his room for sex. People like the woman who was in his hotel room right now. She was sitting on the edge of his bed, her back to him, finger-combing the mess that Casey had made of her long, strawberry blonde hair. "You should stay," Casey said, meaning it. Tess was fun. The sex had been great, and they'd laughed a lot. A perfect night, really. "No way," she said with her adorable Georgia accent. "I'm not doing a walk of shame in the morning in front of all your teammates." Her tone was teasing, but Casey knew she meant it. She'd told him she was new to St. Louis, starting a job. Casey couldn't remember what the job was because he hadn't really understood it when she'd explained it to him. Jobs like mailman and baker he could understand. Jobs like data quality specialist and logistics and integration manager were mysteries to him. But he genuinely listened to people when they talked about themselves, even if he didn't always understand what they were saying. "I don't like that saying," Casey said. "Walk of shame. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Not if you had a good time." He propped himself up on an elbow. "You had a good time, right?" She glanced at him over her shoulder and smiled. "I did. Because I can probably do better. Sometimes I need a practice run, you know? Second time will rock your world. And the third time? Oh my God." She laughed and tossed a pillow at him. "I can't stay. I was only supposed to have one drink at the bar tonight and go straight home. I have work in the morning." "Boo." She leaned over, then kissed him. He sighed happily and deepened the kiss, hoping it might convince her to stay. Her arguments were valid, though. Being on time for a job you'd only started recently and had moved to a whole new city for was probably more important than another round of sex with a hockey player. She broke the kiss, smiled a little sadly at him, and said, "You're cute. Sorry I have to go. Maybe next time you're in St. Louis you can DM me." "For sure," Casey said, though he knew that would be next season sometime. It was still a nice offer. She gathered her clothes from the floor and carried them to the bathroom. Casey fell back against the pillows and smiled at the ceiling. Road trips were awesome. He hoped the guys he'd gone out with had all had good nights too. It had been a small group. Only Gio, Westy, and Petey had gone. Landon hadn't come out. Casey had been disappointed, though he'd only been half expecting him to go. After dinner, Landon had claimed he was tired. Casey had texted him before they left for the bar, one more attempt at an invite, but Landon had replied with, "Staying in, thanks." Casey had enjoyed talking to him earlier in Landon's room. Maybe Landon had hated it. A lot of people found Casey annoying. He knew it. Except there had been that laugh, or that sound that was close to a laugh. Casey needed to hear it again to make sure it was as cute as he remembered. Tess emerged from the bathroom, wearing the tight black pants and bright blue top that had caught Casey's eye in the bar. He hopped out of bed and went to grab his phone from the dresser across the room. "I'll get you a cab." "Thanks," she said, then laughed. "It's always so weird after when you're just, naked." Casey looked down at himself. He was extremely used to being naked around other people for lots of reasons, but he decided to cover his crotch with one hand to be polite. "So much better," she said, still laughing. "Good thing I have huge hands," Casey joked. His dick was not big by anyone's measure, and he knew it. "The car will be here in 5 minutes," Casey said. "I can walk you to the lobby at least, if you give me a sec to—" "No," she said, stepping close to him. "I'm fine on my own." She kissed him. "Thanks for a fun night, and good luck with your hockey game tomorrow." "Aw, thanks." They'd established early on that she had no idea who he was and had never watched a hockey game in her life. Casey didn't mind that. The hero worship he got back in Calgary and sometimes on the road was nice too, but it was good to know people found him attractive for reasons other than his fame and money. Tess left after one more kiss at the door. Casey turned on the overhead lights, then went to the bathroom to get cleaned up. He left the door open and the fan off and cleaned himself with a face cloth rather than taking a shower. He'd do that in the morning. He left the bathroom light on, as well as his bedside lamp, when he was finally ready to sleep. He reminded himself that he was surrounded by his teammates, and that the only thing he had to be afraid of was how much Clint was going to complain in the morning about having to listen to Casey having sex. When he felt brave enough, he turned off the lamp. The room was still lit by the bathroom, but shadows loomed everywhere. "You're fine, Casey," he muttered to himself. "Grow the fuck up." Casey didn't have many secrets, but he fiercely protected this one. He loved his teammates, but they would absolutely roast him if they knew he couldn't stand to be alone in the dark. To be alone at night at all, really. It was the sort of weakness that could be exploited for laughs. Casey had been around hockey long enough to know that sometimes a group of men who spent too much time together got bored. Sometimes they got mean. Sometimes they made bad decisions and hurt people. Casey could withstand being teased and maybe even being embarrassed, but he knew if his teammates ever did anything to really hurt him, the worst part wouldn't be the humiliation or the disappointment. It would be the loneliness. Chapter 6. "Morin is out," Coach Patrick announced before their first practice back in Calgary 5 days later. "He'll be gone until January at least." There were groans throughout the locker room, some frustrated, some sympathetic. Casey immediately looked across the room at Landon. As usual, Landon's face gave nothing away. His mouth remained a tight, flat line, and his eyes were dark and attentive, though Casey guessed he must have a million things going through his head. Casey felt bad for Morin, but this was a big fucking deal for Landon. 2 months was a long time. 2 months could launch a career. It was different for goalies. Casey knew that. Landon may only get to start a couple of games in those 2 months. Anton was known for not needing many nights off. But still, this was huge. As soon as Coach left the room, Casey crossed over to Landon and sat in Ross McIsaac's abandoned stall next to him. "Sounds like you're sticking around," he said, then nudged Landon's arm. "Yeah," Landon said quietly, staring straight ahead. "Sounds like it." "That's cool. I mean, sucks about Morin, but good for you. I will warn you, it gets cold as fuck in Calgary in the winter." Landon's gaze slid over to Casey. "Saskatoon isn't exactly tropical." Casey laughed. "Right, duh. So I don't have to tell you to get a good parka." Landon didn't answer. He looked a million miles away. During practice, Casey was distracted by thoughts of Landon being sad and alone in his hotel room for 2 months. Maybe he'd find a short-term rental somewhere, but he'd still be alone, and Casey sensed that Landon could use a friend. Somewhere between power play drills and a neutral zone transition drill, Casey was struck by a great idea. At least, he was pretty sure it was a great idea. Sometimes he thought ideas were great and they turned out to be terrible, like the time he stirred peanut butter into his coffee. He waited until practice was over and then killed some more time messing around with a puck while Landon stayed in front of one of the nets, talking to the goalie coach, Andy. Finally, Andy patted Landon on the shoulder and left the ice. Casey swooped in. "I have an idea." Landon's dark eyes fixed on him from behind the mask. "What?" "Live with me." "What?" Landon said again. "You need somewhere to live, right? I have a whole huge house, and you can have your pick of the guest rooms. I have a full gym and a sweet TV setup. It's a bit of a drive to the arena, but we can commute together, and I can show you the city. There's a Thai restaurant near my house that is fucking delicious, and if you don't like Thai, there's—" Landon held up his blocker pad. "You don't need to do this. I'm sure I could find a short-term rental somewhere." "Yeah, but why? You heard the part about the gym, right? It even has a treadmill you can destroy." Landon was quiet for a long moment, and Casey braced himself for rejection. Then Landon said, "I like Thai food." Casey beamed. "You can move in any time. Today, if you want. You got much stuff? I can help." "No, I barely had time to pack anything. I don't have my car either." Casey waved a hand. "We'll be carpool buddies, and I've got a second car you can borrow if you need one." "That's—" Landon appeared to be conflicted, which seemed ridiculous to Casey. Finally, he said, "You really wouldn't mind?" "Of course not." Landon's mask tipped down as he fixed his gaze on the ice. "I should warn you, I'm not a ton of fun." "Dude, you're not there to entertain me." "I can pay rent." "Absolutely the fuck not." Casey almost wanted to tell him that he would benefit from this arrangement too, that having another person in the house every night would chill him out like 1,000%. Instead, he said, "The house is way too big for one person. You'd be doing me a favor." Landon's eyes were skeptical when he glanced back up. "Doing you a favor how?" Casey shrugged one shoulder. "By making me feel like less of a dick for buying such a big house. Now there's a reason for it. To house a temporary backup goalie you don't even know?" Casey tapped Landon's left leg pad with his stick blade. "Yet. But I'm gonna get to know him, and it's gonna be awesome." "Home sweet home," Casey announced as they pulled into his driveway. Landon realized his mouth was hanging open, so he shut it. Casey had not been kidding about the size of his house. He hadn't even left the passenger seat of Casey's neon blue Jeep, and he was already in awe. The house was not only enormous, it looked very new and modern, all gray slate siding, dark wood, and glass. Casey hopped out of the Jeep and ran around to the back, presumably to get Landon's bags for him. Landon snapped out of it and exited the vehicle. "I'll get it," he said. "No worries, it's not that much. You should see how many suitcases my parents travel with. You'd think my dad would be good at traveling light, but that man loves his outfit options." Landon wouldn't mind having a few more outfit options. He needed to get to a mall ASAP. He grabbed a small carry-on suitcase because Casey was already carrying the larger, heavier duffel bag toward the front door. The duffel had been packed so haphazardly before Landon had left Saskatoon that he barely knew what was in it. He'd made sure to toss his thinking mask in there, his winter boots, his parka, a few odds and ends from around his apartment like hand cream and, embarrassingly, an Anton Niskanen hockey card that he thought he might ask him to sign, back when he'd thought this would be a short trip. The first thing Landon noticed when he stepped through Casey's front door was how open the house seemed to be. The entrance, living room, dining room, and kitchen all formed one giant space, and the second floor wrapped around it, mezzanine style. You could see almost every room in the house from the front entrance. Landon briefly worried about the lack of privacy, then pushed the thought away. This offer was incredibly generous. As much as he cherished his alone time, he didn't want to spend 2 months in a hotel room. Casey's house was a definite upgrade from the hotel room or from Landon's apartment in Saskatoon. Everything looked bright and new and expensive. The walls were all painted white, and the floors were a light-colored wood, all reflecting the abundant sunlight that streamed through the house's many large windows. "Holy shit," Landon said. "You like it? I just bought it in the summer, so it's new to me too. I still can't figure out half the fancy appliances. The kitchen is a mystery. Come on, I'll give you the tour." Casey dropped the duffel bag by the door and started walking. Landon followed. "Consider this your house, okay? Go wherever you want, use whatever you want. You don't have to ask. So this is the living room. The TV is kind of complicated, but the picture and sound are amazing. I've got full cable, all the movie channels and sports channels." He started counting off on his fingers. "Netflix, Disney, Prime, all that shit. There's a PlayStation and a Switch, too. You like video games?" "Sure," Landon said, even though they'd never been his thing. "Cool. Maybe we can play later." The large sectional sofa was littered with objects: a hoodie, a massage gun, a PlayStation controller, a pair of sunglasses, and, most confusingly, 3 oranges. There was a dirty glass on the coffee table and a pair of sneakers on the floor underneath. Landon followed Casey to the kitchen, which was like the ones he'd always dreamed about, with a Viking gas range, a huge butcher block-topped island, and a farmhouse sink. "Full disclosure," Casey said, "I don't cook. I've used that stove like once, and it was to burn some eggs. So go nuts in here, I guess, if you want." He opened the fridge, revealing stacks of small boxes and containers, all labeled. "I get my food delivered by a service that caters to athletes. It's like tailored to my body or whatever, but I can ask them to send double of everything." That sounded expensive as hell. "No, it's fine. I can get my own food." "Good call. This food is kind of gross, not gonna lie. Healthy, though, and easy." He closed the fridge door and pointed to the touchscreen on the front. "This screen does stuff, but I don't know what. I mean, it's a fridge. It keeps my food cold. I don't need it to do more than that, right? Oh, and the ice maker is fucked. Good luck with it." He started opening cupboard doors. Some had dishes, some were empty. "There's stuff up here and down below. My mom bought all of it."
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.